Elvis Presley walked into a small diner in Memphis at 3 a.m. on November 12, 1969, ordered coffee and pie, and met a 52-year-old waitress named Dorothy Miller who had no idea her life was about to change forever. When Dorothy refused to let Elvis pay for his meal, saying, "Anyone who brings that much joy to the world deserves free pie," Elvis smiled and left. But what Elvis did the next morning when he showed up at her house with a car, a check, and a solution to every problem Dorothy had been silently carrying revealed the side of Elvis that made him more than just the king of rock and roll. This is the true story of Dorothy Miller and the single act of kindness that changed both their lives. November 12, 1969. It was 2:47 a.m., and Elvis Presley couldn't sleep. This was becoming a pattern. The insomnia, the restless nights, the wandering around Graceland trying to find something to occupy his mind. That night, Elvis decided to do what he often did when he couldn't sleep: drive around Memphis. He got in one of his Cadillacs and drove aimlessly through the quiet streets, no destination in mind, just moving. Around 3 a.m., Elvis found himself on Lamar Avenue, a part of Memphis he didn't usually frequent. And that's when he saw it: Mel's Diner, a small 24-hour restaurant with a flickering neon sign and only 2 cars in the parking lot. Elvis was hungry. More than that, he was lonely. Graceland was full of people, the Memphis Mafia, hangers-on, employees, but Elvis felt alone in the crowd. Sometimes he just wanted to be somewhere normal, somewhere that wasn't his mansion or a concert venue or a movie set. He pulled into the parking lot, put on his sunglasses even though it was the middle of the night, and walked into Mel's Diner. The diner was classic 1960s Americana: red vinyl booths, checkered floor, a long counter with spinning stools, and a jukebox in the corner playing Patsy Cline. There were only 3 other customers: a trucker at the counter, a couple in a back booth, and that was it. Behind the counter was a woman in her 50s, wearing the standard waitress uniform of a pink dress with a white apron. Her name tag read Dorothy. She had gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, tired eyes, and the kind of face that showed she'd lived a hard life but hadn't let it make her bitter. Dorothy looked up when Elvis walked in, and her eyes widened slightly with recognition. But she didn't scream or faint or make a fuss. She just smiled and said, "Sit anywhere you'd like, honey." Elvis chose a booth in the corner, away from the windows. Dorothy came over with a menu and a pot of coffee. "Coffee?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am, please," Elvis said. She poured him a cup, and Elvis noticed her hands were shaking slightly, not from nervousness about serving Elvis Presley, but from something else: exhaustion, maybe, or pain. "You know who I am," Elvis said. It wasn't a question. Dorothy smiled. "Of course I do. My daughter has every one of your records. She'd die if she knew you were here." "But you're not going to tell her?" "Not if you don't want me to. Everyone deserves to eat their pie in peace, even Elvis Presley." Elvis laughed. "I haven't ordered pie yet." "But you're going to," Dorothy said with certainty. "Everyone orders pie at 3 a.m. That's the rule. I recommend the cherry. Made it myself this afternoon." "Then I'll have the cherry pie," Elvis said. Dorothy brought him a generous slice of pie and refilled his coffee. Then she went back to wiping down the counter, giving Elvis his space, but staying close enough if he needed anything. Elvis ate his pie slowly, watching Dorothy work. She moved efficiently despite her obvious exhaustion, wiping tables that were already clean, refilling salt shakers, doing the small tasks that needed to be done. At one point, she paused and rubbed her lower back, wincing slightly.
When Elvis finished his pie, he called Dorothy over. "That was the best pie I've had in years." "You're just being kind," Dorothy said, but she looked pleased. "No, I mean it. Thank you." Elvis pulled out his wallet. "What do I owe you?" Dorothy waved her hand dismissively. "Nothing. It's on the house." "Ma'am, I can't let you. Anyone who brings as much joy to the world as you do deserves free pie," Dorothy said firmly. "Besides, you've given my daughter so much happiness with your music. The least I can do is give you a slice of pie." Elvis tried to argue, but Dorothy was insistent. Finally, he gave up and left a $100 bill tucked under his coffee cup when she wasn't looking. But Elvis couldn't stop thinking about Dorothy as he drove back to Graceland. Something about her had touched him, the way she'd treated him like a normal person, the way she'd been kind without wanting anything in return, the way she'd been in obvious pain but kept working anyway. The next morning, Elvis called Joe Esposito into his office. "Joe, I need you to find out about someone for me." "Who?" "A waitress named Dorothy Miller. Works at Mel's Diner on Lamar Avenue. I want to know everything about her situation." Joe looked confused, but didn't question it. By that afternoon, he'd gathered the information. He came back to Elvis looking somber. "Her full name is Dorothy Ann Miller. She's 52 years old, widowed for 6 years. Her husband died in a factory accident, and she was left with 3 kids to raise on her own. The youngest, Linda, is 17 and still in high school. Dorothy works double shifts at the diner, sometimes 16 hours a day, trying to keep the family afloat." "Medical issues?" Elvis asked, thinking about the way Dorothy had been rubbing her back. "Severe arthritis," Joe said. "She needs a hip replacement, but she can't afford the surgery and can't afford to take time off work to recover even if she could pay for it. She's been in pain for 2 years. "What about her kids?" "The oldest, Robert, is 24, working construction. Good kid, helps out when he can. The middle child, Sarah, is 20, working as a secretary, also helps with bills. Linda, the youngest, works part-time at a grocery store while finishing high school. The family lives in a small rental house on the edge of Memphis. From what I could find out, they're barely making ends meet, one crisis away from losing everything." Elvis sat quietly, processing this information. Dorothy Miller had served him pie at 3 a.m. and refused to let him pay, not because she didn't need the money, but because she believed he deserved kindness. This woman who was working herself to death, who was in constant pain, who was struggling to keep her family housed and fed, had given him free pie and a moment of normalcy. "What's the address?" Elvis asked. "Elvis, what are you planning?" "Just give me the address, Joe." The next morning, November 13th, Elvis showed up at Dorothy Miller's house at 9 a.m. It was a small, modest home that had seen better days. The paint was peeling, the porch sagged slightly, and the yard needed work. But it was clean and cared for, showing that whoever lived there took pride in what they had. Elvis knocked on the door. After a moment, a teenage girl answered. This must be Linda, the daughter who loved his music. When Linda saw who was standing on her porch, she literally screamed, "Oh my God! Oh my God! Elvis Presley is at our door!" Dorothy came rushing from the kitchen, still in her rabe clothes, and stopped dead when she saw Elvis standing on her porch. "Mr. Presley? What are you doing here? How did you—" "Can I come in? I'd like to talk to you." Dorothy, still in shock, stepped aside. Elvis walked into the small living room. It was modestly furnished, but clean and homey. Family photos covered every surface. The furniture was old, but well-maintained. Linda was hyperventilating in the corner. Sarah, the middle daughter, had come out of her room and was staring with her mouth open. "Girls, give us a moment," Dorothy said, still trying to process what was happening. The daughters reluctantly left, though Linda kept peeking around the corner. "Elvis, I'm going to be direct with you. After I left the diner yesterday, I had someone look into your situation. I know about your husband's death. I know about your health issues. I know how hard you're working to keep your family together." Dorothy's face flushed with embarrassment. "I don't need charity, Mr. Presley." I know you don't, but you gave me something precious last night. You gave me kindness without expecting anything in return. You treated me like a person, not like Elvis Presley, and you refused payment even though I knew you needed it. So now I'd like to give you something in return. That's not necessary. Elvis held up his hand. Please, let me finish. I've already arranged everything, and I'm not taking no as an answer. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to Dorothy. Inside was a check for $25,000. Dorothy gasped. I can't accept this. This is too much. That money is to pay off your mortgage, pay for your hip surgery, and give you enough cushion to take the time off you need to recover properly. It's already done. The hospital is expecting you next week. Dorothy started crying, her hands shaking as she held the check. Why would you do this for me? I'm nobody. I'm just a waitress. You're not just a waitress, Dorothy. You're a mother who has sacrificed everything for her children. You're a woman who works through constant pain every day without complaining. You're someone who still finds it in her heart to give free pie to strangers. That's not nobody, Dorothy. That's extraordinary.
I don't know what to say, Dorothy whispered. There's more, Elvis said. He pulled out a set of car keys. There's a 1969 Cadillac Sedan DeVille parked outside. It's yours. I noticed your daughter Linda has her license, and I heard she's been taking the bus to school and work. Well, now she doesn't have to. Dorothy couldn't speak anymore. She just cried, holding the check and the keys like she couldn't quite believe they were real. Linda had been listening from the hallway and came running in. Mom, is he serious? Is there really a Cadillac outside? Go look, Elvis said with a smile. Linda ran to the window and screamed. Oh my God, there's a brand new Cadillac in our driveway. Mom, Mom! Sarah came running too, and both daughters were crying and hugging each other and looking out the window at the beautiful blue Cadillac parked in front of their modest house. Dorothy looked at Elvis through her tears. Why? Why would you do all of this? Because last night you reminded me what kindness looks like, Elvis said. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't want a photo or an autograph or a story to sell to the papers. You just gave me a moment of peace and a slice of pie. In a life where everyone wants something from me, that was precious. So this is my way of saying thank you. This is too much, Dorothy said, but she was smiling through her tears. It's not enough, Elvis replied, but it's a start. Elvis stayed for another hour, drinking coffee with Dorothy and her daughters. He answered Linda's breathless questions about his music, signed autographs for both girls, and listened to Dorothy talk about her late husband and how much she missed him. Before he left, Elvis said, Dorothy, I want you to promise me something. Get that surgery. Take care of yourself. Let your kids help you. You've been strong for everyone else for so long. It's okay to accept help now. I promise, Dorothy said. And Mr. Presley, thank you. Not just for the money and the car, though Lord knows that's going to change our lives, but thank you for seeing me, for treating me like I mattered. You do matter, Elvis said. Don't ever forget that. News of Elvis's gift to Dorothy Miller spread quickly through Memphis, though Elvis never publicly confirmed it. Dorothy kept the story private for years, not wanting to exploit Elvis's generosity. But eventually, as people in the neighborhood noticed the Cadillac and Dorothy's situation improving dramatically, the story came out. Dorothy had her hip surgery 2 weeks after Elvis's visit. The operation was successful, and for the first time in 2 years, she was pain-free. She took 3 months off work to recover properly, something she never could have done without Elvis's gift. When Dorothy returned to work at Mel's Diner, she was a different person. Still kind, still hard-working, but no longer in constant pain, no longer carrying the crushing weight of impossible bills and impossible choices. Linda finished high school and went to college, something that wouldn't have been possible before. She studied nursing, inspired by the doctors who'd helped her mother. Sarah was able to quit her second job and focus on her career. Robert started his own small construction company. And Dorothy never forgot Elvis's kindness. Every year on November 13th, the anniversary of the day Elvis showed up at her door, Dorothy would bake a cherry pie and share it with her family, telling them the story of the night she gave Elvis Presley free pie and he changed their lives forever. Elvis and Dorothy stayed in touch for the rest of Elvis's life. He'd stop by Mel's Diner occasionally when he was driving around Memphis at odd hours, and Dorothy would serve him pie and coffee. They'd talk about their families, their struggles, their hopes. Elvis found in Dorothy a friend who never wanted anything from him, who treated him like a person, who reminded him of what really mattered. When Elvis died in 1977, Dorothy was devastated. She attended his funeral, standing in the back with thousands of other mourners, and she cried for the loss of a friend, a kind soul who changed her life with a single act of generosity. In 1982, Dorothy retired from Mel's Diner after working there for 35 years. At her retirement party, her daughters presented her with a gift, a framed photograph of Elvis that Dorothy had never seen before. It had been taken by a photographer outside Mel's Diner one night, showing Elvis walking in the door. On the back, in Elvis's handwriting, was a note, "To Dorothy, who makes the world's best cherry pie and has the kindest heart in Memphis. Thank you for everything. Your friend, Elvis." Dorothy cried when she saw it. "I didn't know he'd written that," she whispered. "I didn't know he kept that photograph." "He did. Joe Esposito gave it to us. He said Elvis always kept it in his wallet, and he wanted you to have it after he died." Dorothy lived to be 91 years old, passing away in 2008. At her funeral, all three of her children spoke about the values she taught them: kindness, generosity, treating everyone with dignity, and never expecting anything in return for doing the right thing. Linda, who'd become a nurse and spent her career caring for others, said in her eulogy, "My mother taught me that true kindness expects nothing in return." When she gave Elvis that free pie, she didn't know who he was going to become in her life. She just saw someone who needed a moment of kindness. And Elvis, in his wisdom, recognized what a special person she was and gave back 100-fold. That's the lesson I've tried to live by. Be kind without expecting rewards, but also be gracious enough to accept kindness when it's offered. The blue 1969 Cadillac that Elvis gave Dorothy is still in the family. Linda's son, Dorothy's grandson, drives it now. He's named it Cherry Pie in honor of the night that changed his family's life forever. And in Mel's Diner, which is still operating in Memphis today, there's a small plaque on the wall by the booth where Elvis sat that November night in 1969. It reads, "On November 12, 1969, Elvis Presley sat in this booth and ordered cherry pie. Dorothy served him with kindness and refused payment, saying, 'Anyone who brings that much joy to the world deserves free pie.' Elvis never forgot that kindness, and the next day he changed her life forever. This booth is dedicated to Dorothy Miller, 1917 to 2008, and to the power of simple kindness. The booth has become something of a pilgrimage site for Elvis fans. People come from all over the world to sit where Elvis sat, order cherry pie, and hear the story of Dorothy Miller and the night that kindness met generosity. The story of Elvis and Dorothy reminds us that small acts of kindness can have massive ripple effects. Dorothy didn't give Elvis free pie expecting anything in return. She did it because she believed in being kind. And Elvis, recognizing that pure generosity, responded with life-changing help. But more than that, the story shows us the Elvis Presley that existed beyond the fame and the concerts and the controversies. The Elvis who drove around Memphis at 3 a.m. looking for connection. The Elvis who noticed a waitress in pain and cared enough to help. The Elvis who valued kindness above celebrity worship. Dorothy Miller gave Elvis Presley free pie and treated him like a human being, and Elvis Presley gave her a new life, not for publicity or praise, but simply because he recognized goodness when he saw it and wanted to honor it. That's the kind of story that matters. Not the gold records or the sold-out shows, but the 3 a.m. moment in a quiet diner when two people connected through simple human kindness, and that connection changed both their lives forever. If this story of kindness and generosity moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that kindness always matters, even when no one's watching. Have you ever had a small act of kindness change your life? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more true Elvis stories that show the heart behind the legend.